talk about food. Let's talk about what I think is the most important subject for everybody, for anyone who's interested in healing anything that they have going on, or more importantly, sometimes preventing. And just overall, what we were talking about yesterday, looking younger, feeling better, having more energy, and just spiritually feeling more connected, mentally feeling more balanced, and all these things come from understanding what is food for human beings and what is not food for human beings. Okay, so I call this the Fred Bush food talk, or we call it Food 101. It's just basically, now we're going to talk about understanding the subject scientifically, and from the perspective of anatomy and physiology, what the story is with food. And of course, this is a yoga training, so we'll obviously talk about the spiritual part of that at some point. All right, so then this is a conversation that starts with a question. And the question is, who am I? Remember that question from a spiritual perspective? We were asking, who am I? Yoga question, you meditate on that question. Well, this is more of a question of who am I as a species? Okay, and that question is what we're going to really be answering. When we answer that question, then we understand what we're supposed to eat in order to, optimize our healing capacities and to prevent things. Now, my background, those who already know, is not coming from a place. I was not born a raw food vegan. I was born a regular suburban kid who ate more cheeseburgers and more sausage pizza and more Coca-Cola than anyone you've ever met in your life. So don't think that I'm here to judge or to talk about it. And I'm also not here to, push you into an uncomfortable place. You'll take this information. It will, and I also don't want you to take my word for it. Okay, I'm not here to, have you take anything that I say on faith. If what I say to you doesn't make sense, or if what I say to you, you can look it up and see that that's not true, ignore what I have to say. I don't care. I'm not here to make you believe me. Okay, I'm here to present some information, share some stuff. If it makes sense to you, then you can apply it. And if it doesn't, then you don't have to apply it. But you see, my intention here is called knowledge. Right? And maybe you've heard that knowledge is also called power. Right? And so my intention is to give you power by giving you knowledge about a subject that most people are highly misinformed about, and then it has pretty disastrous consequences for both us personally and for our families and for everybody, because we don't understand one of the most fundamental relationships in our life, which is our relationship to food, all right, and what kind of species we are, as I said. So, as I said, always, when you're going to talk about, as teachers or as healers or as anybody in life who's going to help other people, I'm talking about nutrition right now, but let's not forget that there's really 5 fundamental factors, and that's what my book is about, right? So we're going to talk about the nutrition angle and the nutrition element now, but ultimately there's 5 factors. How do you eat is one of those factors. How do you exercise or move your body, move your lymphatic system? Second factor, right? How are you using your mind, or how is your mind using you? Okay, third factor. How are you able to rest? Are you exhausted and sleep deprived? Because that's not good for the immune system, and this is all about the immune system. And then how are you able to live organically? Okay, I don't mind that sound at all, because that's the sound of a fresh juice being blended up with grapes and bananas and maracuja and orange juice. So that sound is fantastic as far as I'm concerned. Right? We're all going to be enjoying that sound probably in about 15 minutes, hopefully. Because here we are at Think Abhyana Star, and Think Abhyana Star is a center that we created so people can come here and heal or prevent or experience, what the elements are, and that's what this retreat center was made for. So it's really nice to have everybody here and enjoying the juices, enjoying the environment the way that I had kind of visualized that could be. Well, now let's get into it. I said it's all about the question of who am I. We're going to first talk about meat, everybody. Just to make it clear what we're talking about, we're first going to talk about meat, and then we'll get into the dairy conversation, okay? We'll talk about eggs and all that for a minute. And then we'll talk about protein. Everyone's favorite conversation and topic is protein, and where do you get your protein? And we'll talk about any other of these common questions like vitamin B12 and all of that stuff, so that you have all of your, different parts of your intellect satisfied. And then we'll go with questions and answers, and hopefully then you'll be really in a different position when it comes to understanding the subject. And ultimately, you'll likely be in a position where you know more about nutrition and the science of that than most even nutritionists and most even medical doctors know. And I say that because people can study nutrition for an entire career and then graduate and actually not understand the subject very well, because the way that it's taught in universities and classical nutrition is not actually scientifically accurate. And we can talk about what the differences are between how they study it and what this approach is demonstrating. Okay. So who are we? We're talking about meat. We better define meat. Gotta define it, because there's a lot of confusion, right, about meat, where people say, oh, I don't eat meat, I only eat fish. Have you heard that one before? Yes. Or I'm a flexitarian, or whatever they want to call it, and then all of a sudden now they don't understand that there's absolutely zero difference between a chicken, a fish, a cow, a goat, another human being. These are all dead animals, and a dead animal is a dead animal. Now, the first way that we're going to talk about meat is from the perspective of physiology. Okay?
So now you mean with meat also fish, right?
Yes, I have just said they are exactly the same. I thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, we're talking about fish, we're talking about chicken, we're talking about beef, we're talking about every single kind of dead animal that's rotting and putrefying because it's already dead. Okay? Now, we're going to talk about physiology, and at this point now, I'm going to ask you that you hold all questions until the end, okay? And that you write down your questions as they go. Don't forget any questions, and I need to address them. But I'm going to now ask that I just flow with this, because it's a little bit easier for me. It's a big subject. I like to kind of do it all in the best way I can for you. All right, so we're talking about meat, and as I said, we're talking about the first dimension of this conversation, and I'm going to call this evidence, right? I call it evidence, right? I'm not saying this is proof, proof, no proof, I don't know, I don't care. I'll call this as evidence that God, or nature, because to me those are interchangeable words, did not design us as human beings to eat dead animals. Now, we're talking about meat, we're talking about physiology, and we're talking about answering the question of who am I? Well, let's answer it. Who you are is called a primate. Have you ever heard of that word, a primate? Okay, and do you know that primate is a classification of a mammal? And that primates have two divisions, and that those divisions are monkeys and apes. Have you heard of these words before, right? Monkey and ape. But do you know the difference between a monkey and an ape? Well, monkeys have tails, and apes do not have tails, and that is the only difference. Okay? So then, if a monkey has a tail and an ape does not have a tail, and you are a primate, which primate are you? You are an ape. You are a member of the family of great apes. You have not been evolved from any of them. That's not what evolution has ever suggested. And we can speak about whether we think evolution is accurate as a theory or not, but it never suggests that you evolved from a chimpanzee. That's not what it was saying. It's saying there's something called a common ancestor. And that the common ancestor then created this branch of animals. Well, whether or not that's true or not, we are definitely on the tree or on the branch of the great apes. We are a great ape. Okay, now, how do we know that? Well, because we are physiologically the same. In other words, if you were to open up a chimpanzee and open up a human being and open up a mountain gorilla and open up a gibbon and open up an orangutan, all of the great apes that are there, and you look inside the bodies, you basically see mirror images of each other. These are the same structures. The same structure, I mean, the same digestive structure, the same cardiovascular structures. I mean, we really are essentially the same. And so there is something that exists, a science that exists, and it's called comparative anatomy. Well, the science of comparative anatomy is a science that says that digestive structures determine food intake. In other words, all animals that have the same digestive structure eat the same thing in nature. And so if you were to find that digestive structure in an animal, you would know what that animal ate without even knowing what the animal was. You understand that? Because the structure is the function. Now, so that's all true, and comparative anatomy there's no exceptions. As I said, all animals that have this structure eat this way, and we have the same structure as the great apes. So what do the great apes eat? Now,
Fruits.
mostly fruits, yeah. Now, and I would say mostly, I mean 95%, like even more than 95%, almost entirely fruit. Now, I don't come to you from a place of theory when it comes to me telling you what great apes eat. I come to you from a place of experience because not only did I work in a wildlife rehabilitation center, which I told you guys about before, when I was really young. When I was older, in my college years, I worked at Monkey Jungle in Miami. And Monkey Jungle is a massive tourist attraction. Well, it's actually a very small, rinky-dink tourist attraction with a massive collection of primates. And they're the #1, probably biggest private collection of primates in the world. And it's a tourist attraction. And they have mountain gorilla, and they have chimpanzees, and they have the whole thing. And pretty much it's just a primate zoo, okay? And I worked there for years, and I watched these animals eat, and I watched everything about it. And I studied this from an observation perspective. And what did the veterinarians feed the great apes? An entire just plates of fruit. That's it. Humongous trays of fruit. That's what they ate only. I noticed that I asked you, what did the veterinarian feed the animals? I didn't ask you what did the trainer feed the animal. The trainer doesn't take a diet of an ape, a great ape, of an animal that's so valuable. Who picks the diet? The vet, the veterinarian, the doctor. Now, I just want to make a small point here about that, because I find it curious that we call ourselves intelligent as human beings, and yet we apply our intelligence in such a selective way that we are able to determine scientifically in the context of zoos or primate centers that here's an animal that has this kind of anatomy and that is designed to eat this in nature. And so we want to keep this animal healthy and fit. We're going to make sure that we only feed it this way. And we're even going to make sure we put signs on the cages or on the enclosures that say what? What do those signs say? Do not feed the animals. Have you ever been to a place with wild animals before? Okay. So it will say, do not feed the animals. Why? Okay. So you know why, because if you want to make an animal sick, you feed it something outside of its natural design. Well, so we do this with animals in the zoo, but then we do not do this for ourselves or for our children. In other words, we are putting more intelligence and more, we can say, I don't know a better word. We are putting more intelligence into the way that we are maintaining and keeping healthy the animals in zoos than we are to our own families and to our own children. Because we seem to think that we are not a member of any kind of species that has any kind of scientific or biological reality. And we seem to think that human dietary is a matter of opinion. Is that true? Everyone has a different opinion about what you're supposed to eat, right? Doctor this says that you should eat this, and doctor this. Everyone's an MD, everyone's a medical doctor or a PhD in nutrition, and they all got these degrees, and everyone, guess what, has a different opinion about what human beings as a species should eat. And here's my perspective on this. You're not allowed to have an opinion about what a species in nature eats. You cannot have an opinion about what a chimpanzee eats in nature. You can't have an opinion about that. That's fact. You understand what I mean when I say that? You can't have an opinion about what a lion eats. It's just simply not your opinion. It's nature. You know what I mean when I say that? And so humans are also a species, like every other one. And there is no room for opinion about what a species eats. It's simply science, it's biology, this is anatomy, it's chemistry. It's not, you can't debate it. Just like you cannot debate what a chimpanzee eats. Or what a lion or a shark eats. You cannot debate it, it's just evidence. It's self-evident. Okay? Now, we are who we are, and you will always be a primate, and no matter what intellectual capacity you have, you will still always be a primate. Even if you can do calculus, even if you can speak 7 languages, you're still going to be a primate. You're still going to be a great ape, which means that you still have a biological reality which you may want to live more in line with. Because what we're doing right now as a species is creating an environment where we're so far, everything that we're doing, those 5 factors I talked about, is so far away from our nature that it's an epidemic of unhealthy people, okay? Of people with lymphatic issues, people that are overweight, people with psychological nervous system issues. I mean, if it's not one thing, it's another thing. But what it is this entire species that's living with medication and pharmaceuticals, and lack of vitality, and lack of wellness, and depression. I mean, it's like, this is the results of what happens when a species lives very, very far away from its biological nature. Okay, now, talking about primates, we're talking about meat, we're talking about that you are that you have the same digestive system as these great apes do. Well, what is it? It's a system whereby the intestines are 12 times longer than the torso. That's a ratio. Our intestines are about 60 feet long, roughly, maybe a little bit less, a little more, but whatever, it's about 12 times the length of the torso of the body. That ratio you will see with the chimpanzee, the mountain gorilla, all that, and the human being. Now, what does it mean? Well, a system like that is designed for one thing, basically, in order to have it function correctly. And I know you've heard of this before. Have you ever heard that you need to eat your fiber? You ever heard that? You have to eat fiber for regularity, so that your bowels move, okay? So you're dealing with a system that is so long, so convoluted, and with so many wrinkles and so many just crunched together, that if you don't have fiber, which is what the body uses to actually pull the material through the digestive system, if you don't have the fiber, you don't have movement. Because the system works through something called peristalsis. And peristalsis is like a snake moving with the concentric over distance contraction, and the peristalsis is used and it needs fiber to pull the material through. Now, so we're talking about you are are a species that requires food that has fiber. Well, what food has fiber? Plant food has fiber, of course. All plant foods have fiber. Fruit has so much fiber. Of course, vegetable foods as well have fiber. So both of these foods can be eaten by human beings. What doesn't have fiber? I don't know if you know this, but by the very definition of what these things are, they have zero fiber. Flesh food. Dead flesh has zero fiber. So now, a dead fish, a dead goat, a dead chicken has zero fiber. Now you eat something that has zero fiber. Let's take a dead fish. So you eat a dead fish. Now, let's even start with before you eat the dead fish. Okay? Have you ever been to a fish market? Does it smell really good? Would you like to maybe make a perfume called Fish Market? Or an incense? That's funny. Never thought about that joke before. No. Fish Market smells good? Why not? What are you really smelling? Death. You're smelling putrefaction. You're smelling a process of putrefaction, we call it in English as well, which is a process of degradation and breakdown of biological material by the bacterial kingdom, okay, and it creates an amazing amount of very toxic waste gases and products, because that's the process that nature breaks things down. And nature breaks things down the moment God leaves. What do I mean when I say God leaves? I mean the moment that the Spirit leaves. See, God, or the Spirit, is keeping you organized. That's called intelligence. And that is why you are not a, ball of cells right now that's about to also become another animal. In other words, the reason why you're still here and you're not decomposing is because you have God in you. Spirit, intelligence. Okay? Soon as you die, Spirit leaves, guess what happens to your body? All of it disorganizes. Immediately. From the first second. Okay? And that disorganization then is the process of putrefaction, which is the process of some of the most, and I'm not going to use the word, in the sense of judgment, but some of the most, from our perspective of hygiene, some of the most disgusting processes that we could really imagine exposing ourselves to. Remember I said yesterday, or the other day, that gas itself doesn't smell, but when gas has to pass through an entire intestinal tract full of rot and decrepitness and breakdown, then it's going to smell like that. And so that's really what's happening. Because when we take flesh foods, any of them, and put them into a system, now it's already rotting. You see, that was my point. It's already rotting. You don't even, now it has no fiber. Now it's not moving. Because it needs fiber to move. There's no fiber. It can't move, at least not with the same efficiency. Pieces and parts of it will get stuck in the crevices, in the cracks, of which our intestines are famous for having. Carnivorous intestines don't have them. Carnivorous intestines are smooth and short and wide. They're exactly the opposite of ours. And omnivorous ones are also not like ours either, because omnivores also have to handle flesh. And nature knows that if you have to handle flesh, you have to have a smooth intestinal wall. Because otherwise the rotting stuff becomes acidic, and even in a carnivore it wouldn't work. So they're designed digestionally to handle that. We are not. It's just evidence. Remember, I'm talking about evidence. It says that we're not designed for this. Take it or leave it. Now, this stuff is in your system and it's already rotting, and now it's in an environment that's closed, wet, and warm. Do you realize what kind of environment that implies? So if I took rotting meat and put it in a pan or a pot or a jar, right? A bunch of rotting meat, rotting fish, and I put in this jar, and I close it up, closed. I add a little water to it, wet, and I stick it in the sun in Cartagena at the beach for 4 weeks. You want to open up that jar? That jar that we're talking about is what's going on in everybody's intestines. Everybody that you know. Everybody that you know. That's why the gas smells so bad. That's why there's so many other symptomologies, bad breath, acne. The body is just doing its best constantly. But really, the things I mentioned were very lightweight. You see, really, this is a process of acid, okay, creating cellular damage over the long run. Cellular damage. The next step is, well, cellular damage is actually the end result, because the acid first creates an irritation, which then creates inflammation, which then creates cellular damage. And there's another name for cellular damage. In our world, it's called cancer. The cancer cell is the damaged cell. All of it coming from this is why there's so much bowel cancer and so many, there's just cancer everywhere. Because damaged cells are coming from an environment that we're giving it. We're forcing our body in. And then, we'll talk about the lymphatic system perhaps soon enough, but this is the real crux of it. Because then our ability to eliminate waste, remember I talked about constipation? And as soon as our ability to eliminate waste, because we're constipated, because there's no fiber, your body is producing pounds and pounds of cellular waste every day. And you're eating. So there's just so much waste building up in your body, and if it doesn't get released, now there's no way to have health. No way. All right? All of it comes from the starting of this conversation on what the heck are we putting in our mouth. Now I'm staying with meat. I've talked about the fact that if you eat it, it's going to putrefy. If it putrefies, it's going to rot, and that is going to create havoc, either symptoms that are small and minor, like bad breath or acne, or bad smelling gas, or the real thing, which is, the Crohn's diseases, the things that are intestinal issues, the lymphatic issues, and of course, the damaged cell, which has the word that they use in the medical paradigm called cancer. We don't even use that word. We use the word damaged cell here. I'm a student of Dr. Morse, and the Dr. Morse system is the system that we use for healing these type of cases. So yeah, and Dr. Morse doesn't use the word cancer. He'll only use the word damaged cell to describe that. Anyway, there's another physiological evidence that says that demonstrates that we're not designed to eat this stuff. And the other physiological evidence is that in nature, if you're an animal designed to hunt or kill another animal, in other words, you're designed to eat other animals and you're in nature, you're also born with what you need to kill those animals. Either the kind of teeth that you need, or the kind of strength that you need, or the kind of eyesight that you need, right? Or the kind of reflexes that you need. Call it what you want. Call it what you want. If you have to do a killing, you have to kill something, then you will be born with the skill set to do the job. Are there any exceptions to that in nature? Are there any exceptions to that? I mean, have you ever seen a tiger that was born and its mom said to it, well, son, you obviously weren't born with skills, so let's go to Walmart and let's buy you a gun, because you can't kill. Ever seen that in National Geographic? No. As a human being, we eat all kinds of animals, apparently. No? So we eat cows, right? We eat cows. People do, right? People eat cows. You ever seen that before? People eat cows? I eat tons of cows. I ain't judging anyone who ever eat a cow. I eat more than you. I eat McDonald's every day. So people eat cows, right? Now, we have a cow here on the property, actually. It's Hernan's cow. So she's a nice, beautiful cow. And what if you wanted to kill that cow with your bare hands and with no tools whatsoever? Okay? Or what if her husband was there, and now it's a bull, and it has a couple things called horns. And have you ever been to one of these cattle fairs? I have. I went to one, to see these things. And guys, just a domesticated cow. I'm not even talking about a buffalo or something that that is literally unstoppable. I'm talking about a domestic cow. You would not be able to kill one of those things ever. Even if I gave 10, 15 people and said, all of you try to kill that cow, you couldn't do it. Evidence that you were never designed to kill things like that. You also can't catch chickens. You also cannot outswim a fish. Okay? Mostly everything that we involve ourselves in, we could never kill it. We can maybe kill a few insects once in a while. And yeah, primates do eat insects accidentally, because they're eating fruit and they're foraging through the dirt. And sometimes, there's insects in the fruit, and that could be part of the accidental 0.5% that happens in nature, sure. Okay? But at the end of the day, we are either in nature born with what you need to do the job, or you're not meant to do the job. Okay? It's evidence. And we're not born with anything except hands, and these, by the way, are not canine teeth. That is what's called pseudoscience. And pseudoscience is when people use scientific terminology to lie to your face. They lie to your face using scientific terms so nobody can figure it out. It's called pseudoscience. And when they say all these teeth and they say that they're canines, that is one of the very many perfect examples of that. Okay? These are just teeth. Have you ever seen a canine? You want me to bring Zeus in from outside, one of the dogs? And let me show you what a real canine is. Canines are made to tear flesh from bone. Okay? What you have is teeth. But they call it canines to justify the fact that they think, so that you think you're supposed to eat meat. Canines. Teeth. Okay? Now, simply put, physiologically speaking, you are a primate. And you're a great ape. And great apes don't hunt. Okay? Great apes, if a great ape is going to eat an animal, it is going to be so rare. And it is going to be the result of aggression. Like violence, like territoriality. Like in the same way that a group of male humans can get together, get all crazy, and have a lot of violence, well, male chimpanzees can do the same thing. And if male chimpanzees are all out there doing their thing, and another primate comes into their trees, they're liable to just kill them. And nature's very provident and not stupid. So after they kill the thing, nature's not stupid. They just eat it. But they're not hunting, and they don't ever hunt, because they eat fruit. That's just something that happens once in a while. And it could happen once a year, it could happen once every 6 months, it could happen. But what happened is they filmed it once. And then they've used it to justify that humans are primates, and primates are meat eaters, because look at these one chimpanzee group, and look how they ate a monkey once. When you do the mathematics on how little flesh a great ape would eat in an entire year, it would be the equivalent of a human being eating flesh 3 days a year. Be that equivalent. Okay? So if someone's a regular meat eater would like to shift to a 3-day-a-year meat-eating diet, that's fine. I support that. Go ahead. That's 362 days that now are not involving a person hurting themselves and hurting something else for no reason at all. Okay, now. Physiologically, evidence number 1, your intestinal system. Physiologically, evidence number 2, look at you. Look at you, look who you are. Look what you can do well. You can climb trees really well, but you can't swim really well. You can't outswim a tuna fish. You ever seen what a tuna fish looks like? You know how big they are, right? And you know that they're warm-blooded? You know, a tuna fish is a warm-blooded fish. There's very few warm-blooded fish. It's a warm-blooded fish. It's also the size of your average truck. Okay? 1,000-pound fish? You're gonna outswim that? You're gonna kill a tuna fish? How? You see? So, and this is the thing, you're not born with nets, you're not born with a net, you're not born with a fishing pole, you're not born with a shotgun. And I sometimes make jokes about how, one time someone was born with a fishing pole and people believe my story. And I'm like, I'm just kidding. What do you mean? You really thought that kid was born with a fishing pole? I'm like, oh, there was this event and this kid was born and his hand was stuck in the womb. And when it came out, it was holding a fishing pole. And everyone's like, oh my God. I'm like, well, no, actually that didn't happen. I'm like, oh my God. Well, but you see the metaphor there. You're not born with anything. Because you're not designed to do that. Because if you were, you wouldn't have to use a fishing pole. You see it? There's no exceptions to this stuff, guys. None. This is an absolute. Unless you come up with an exception, and let me know. Now, we're going to shift to what I consider to be a much more interesting subject, which is the evidence that is psychological. That we're not designed to eat dead animals, we're not designed to kill things, we're not designed to be involved with that from a perspective of nature. This is a psychological evidence. Now, I have a few things to say about this, and I think, as I said, this is to me even more interesting than the physiological stuff. The physiological stuff, the fact that we don't learn that in 3rd grade is just crazy. I mean, it's just biology. It's just a joke. I mean, it's there for everyone to see it, in other words. Now, this psychological stuff is not quite as obvious until you look at it, okay? And so I think it's more interesting, actually. So, first question is, now, you are a little hungry, okay? Let's say you're a little bit hungry, okay? And let's say your breakfast is a little bit late for you, okay? And, your son was growling, breakfast is a little late, okay. And all of a sudden, what walks into this room is one of my neighbor's baby pigs. Okay, you ever seen a baby pig? I mean, like a really small, pink, possibly one of the cutest things you've ever seen in your entire life. Okay, so this little baby pig is like 5 days old, and he's come off his mom's breast. And now he's walking through the room, and you're a little hungry. Okay, now I want to know, as you visualize this scenario, this little baby walking around and saying hi to everybody and doing what a baby dog would do, really, because the pig and the dog are the same type of animal. Now, as you visualize that, how many people your first thought of all is when the pig walks by you, just smash it with your block. And I know you all have a block, and then it's just bleeding everywhere. And then just pick it off the ground and just start squeezing its blood into your mouth as you devour its internal organs. Was that your first thought? No? First thought? That wasn't it? Okay. Now I have news for you. On planet Earth, you are not an omnivore and you are not a carnivore. Period. End of that entire conversation. And I will explain it, but that is the end of it. There are no exceptions. If you were on this planet, Earth, I don't know about other planets, because I ain't been there. On Earth, if you were an omnivore and you are a carnivore, and you see that, and you're hungry, there is only one thing that will happen, and that is lunch, or breakfast, or dinner. There will be no intellectual thought. There will be no, oh my God, that's the cutest thing I've ever seen. There will be none of that. It will be very simple. Now, you guys were hungry. I said you're hungry. Okay? You've missed breakfast. You still gonna murder that pig right there in front of you? Now, maybe if you haven't eaten in 3 or 4 weeks, I'll kill the pig for you. And we'll eat that pig raw. And that pig, if we haven't eaten in 4 weeks, will keep us going as long as we don't cook it. It has its vitality. So yeah, there's obviously extraordinary circumstances. You're starving to death. then yeah, a little raw blood, a little raw meat will keep your engines running for a few minutes, and then you get to place. But guys, I'm sorry to say, but we live in a world of supermarkets, and we don't live in a world like that. Okay, so anything short of that. Now, was your first thought to kill that pig? No. Why? Because you are a primate. You're not a predator. Primates are not predators. And all omnivores are predators. And you are not an omnivore, even though you were told that you were. Isn't that right, that you were told growing up that you're omnivorous? Right? Isn't that how our doctors tell it to us, to have what they call a balanced diet? My favorite word in the world, a balanced diet. And then, of course, they're describing an omnivorous diet, where you have flesh food, then you have dairy food, and then you have some plant food, and that's their omnivorous prescription for you. As if you're an omnivore. Well, I'm saying, and now I'm going to show you again, you are the farthest thing from an omnivore that there is. You can eat omnivorously and still survive for a certain period of years at a low level of functioning, for sure. Because life is so strong. It can survive under very suboptimal conditions, if you haven't noticed. I mean, think about everyone, how long they're living, and they're just so sick. But life is so freaking strong, it just doesn't give up that easy. Okay? So yeah, you can live 60 years of compromised health as an omnivore, sure. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what you're designed for. Now, let's see if you're really an omnivore or not. I'll give you a choice. You can choose. Let's all choose today. You can make your choice. Ready? Here's your choice. You can be a primate, and I will then put you in the world of the great apes. You're welcome to be there. Chimpanzees, mountain gorillas, okay, that's your family tree, and I can stick you in that family tree. You're welcome to be there. Or I'm happy to place you directly into the omnivorous family tree. I think I can squeeze you in right between the pig and the rat. Would you like to fit in there? Between the pig and the rat, the dog and the bear? Is that pretty much where you belong? Is that what you look like? Is that what you identify with? Being a pig or a dog or a rat? Somebody will eat anything. You'll eat anything. Now a pig, let me tell you how you know you're not an omnivore. Okay? We talked about the whole thing about predation. Here's another reason that you know you're not an omnivore. Okay? Do you want to know what happens to pigs and hogs when they start to get hungry?
They eat themselves?
Yes, they eat each other. Yeah. They eat their kids. They eat anything. They eat their brothers. They eat themselves. They eat each other. Omnivores will do that. Would you do that? Would you eat your mom? Because you're both hungry? No. Not unless she already died. You know what I mean? I'm talking about they eat them living. This is omnivores. You're not an omnivore. You don't have the psychology. Now, what I'm really trying to say is that you are not what we call natural-born killers. You don't want to kill everything that you see. My dogs do, unfortunately. You saw what they did the other day. It freaking breaks my heart. Anything they see, they just want to kill it. They're not even hungry. They break my heart. It's the worst part about dogs, that this is their nature, and that this is a big area, and that they find things. You know, it's a necessary evil, I guess, but it really sucks. They kill it because it's just their instinct. And then they're not hungry, so they don't eat it. But it's their psychology. I'm talking about psychology now. And you don't have it. You don't have a targeting system psychologically. You don't see everything that you see. You don't want to calculate what it takes to kill that thing or to track it down or nothing. Because psychologically, you're not a killer. Because God didn't give you the software to do it. But God gives every animal it has to kill the software to kill, meaning the ability to do it. Now, are you ready for what I think is the most interesting of all psychological evidence? That we're really not designed to be doing this killing thing. Now, Did you know that a baby lion and a mother lion in Africa, as the baby is growing up and is a small little thing, the mother might choose to half kill an animal. You know what I mean? Like a small one, half kill it, leave it injured, and then let the baby play with it and try to kill it. You know, let the baby lion try to finish it off. You know that that's how it works, right? And the mother is teaching the baby the skills that it needs to survive. Isn't that true? Everyone agrees with that. That is true. Okay. Now, now let's go to human beings for a minute. Do you know what happens when a human child is seen systematically killing or torturing animals? I don't mean they do it once and then get freaked out by what they did and feel guilty and never do it again, because I did that. I don't mean that. I mean they enjoy it. I mean these are kids that are always in the corner with a magnifying glass burning frogs and hurting animals and doing really things like that. Do you know what, and killing things like that. Do you know what happens to kids like that when they're given psychological analysis or evaluation?
Psychopath?
They're called psychopaths. Yeah, they're given a name, psychopaths. Now, I've just explained that in a environment where it is natural and correct for an animal to be a killer, that early in the childhood it is encouraged and in fact given opportunities to practice killing, because that's nature for them. Now, yet here in human beings, when a human child is seen killing things, it is an immediately designated imbalance and considered a dangerous psychopathic psychology, because nothing. Now, you understand that if it was in our nature to be killers and eaters of animals, that couldn't happen, that we would not designate children to be psychopaths. If they were killing, we would encourage it. I want you to realize how important what I just said is. The fact that we identify that behavior as psychopathic means that that is so far from our nature as adults. It's the very definition of what that means. We are not killers. That doesn't mean we can't kill if we have to. We're survivors. So yeah, put us in a very hostile environment. Like what happens with Native Americans when they find themselves in these places and there's snow on the ground for 6 months of the year and no fruit grows, but there's animals everywhere, and then they would kill one animal or two animals, and then they would use that animal for 3 months, and they would eat it raw, and they would make a spiritual practice out of it and give thanks to the soul of the animal. And okay, yeah, and live in harmony with nature. Sure. That's not the industries that we're talking about. Okay, and that's because they had to. They were living in places that had no fruit and that had no real food for humans, because we're primates, we're not designed to eat it. But again, we can survive, but humans that have to use animal foods, like the Eskimos, in the north, those kinds of humans are never the long-lived versions of the human populations. The longest-lived human populations are always plant-based eaters, and there's evidence of them. The longest-lived people are called the Hunzas. Hunza. Hunza. They are famous for living way past 100 years old, like almost all of them. And they live in a place where they have very clean food. They're almost entirely vegetarian. They have clean water. They live in the Himalayas of Pakistan. That's where the Hunza region is. It's the Pakistani Himalayas. And they're famous for longevity. And when you study what they did, and they also are very good at resting, which is why I put resting as one of my fundamental factors. These guys are great at taking naps. Okay, and they'll take a nap anywhere they are, even if they're in the middle of the field and they're planting the field, they're doing their work and they feel exhausted. They'll just lie down in the middle of the field and take a 20-minute cat nap and then get up and keep working. And that is something that I think is important for their longevity. Anyway, physiologically, we're not, or psychologically, excuse me, we're not natural born killers. And that in and of itself, to me, is the most important evidence of them all. Even more value, even more kind of striking than the physiological evidence, which I think is kind of basic. Both of which, though, are pretty clear as to who we are and what we're designed to be doing. And what's also clear is that when we are doing what we're not designed to do, then we certainly are paying a very steep price. Okay? Our culture, our society, and our relationship to healthcare, how they call it healthcare. It's a funny name, right? Healthcare. Really it's disease management, right? It's not healthcare. It's disease management, and that's certainly not something that we want to, get involved with. That's the real difference in paradigm between what our system is here, at our healing center here, and Dr. Morse's system, and on the natural hygiene system, and all the systems that understand this, is that, things that are medical symptomologies have a cause. They have a reason, and you need to address that reason. And that reason is not a lack of a pharmaceutical. You see, it's like you get a headache and they give you a Tylenol or they give you something stronger, but no one ever asked them the question, well, was it a deficiency in Tylenol that caused my headache, doctor? It wasn't a deficiency in Tylenol that caused my headache, so why would Tylenol be the solution? You see? And that's obviously a very simple example, but in every case, cause is not addressed. And so with cause not being addressed, how are you really going to help people? And they don't. They just make things worse most of the time. There's a lot of death responsible by the medical paradigm. And the allopathic, they call it allopathy, means Western medicine, is responsible for millions of deaths every year. It's extremely, extremely unfortunate, due to missed medication things, bad surgeries. Oh my God, the list goes on. Chemotherapy. Chemotherapy itself just murders people. It's just death. Radiation just murders people. Most people don't die from cancer; they die from the treatment of cancer. If you haven't heard that before, that's absolutely true. Because that combination is just really tough, and the body doesn't recover very easily from that. Now, let's get moving on forward though with the next level of why we're not designed to eat meat, or flesh foods, which is spiritual. Okay? I won't take too long on this, but I will address it. It's my favorite part of the subject. It's also the reason why I do what I do. I don't do what I do for health reasons. Because for me to do what I did for health reasons, that would mean that my motivation would be to live forever, or for my motivation to be to have a long life. But my motivation to do this is not that, because I can't control that. Because even if I eat perfectly, even if I do everything perfectly, there's still some little thing called karma, and I might have to pay something, and so I might not live long. I might, but I don't eat really, really well so that I can live forever, because I'm not going to live forever. Am I? What's the mortality rate of human beings on Earth? Anybody know? The mortality rate of human beings on Earth?
80 years.
80 years? Is that what mortality rate means?
Mortality.
What does mortality rate really mean? What's the mortality rate for human beings on Earth? 100%. Everybody dies. Nobody gets off this planet alive. Okay? So the motivation really ultimately can't be that. And so for me, the motivation to eat in the way that I eat is spiritual. And it's also for the present moment. And that's the yoga part. You see, we eat well. Do you guys maybe have felt like you drink these juices and you're eating this way, and then you meditate and you just feel good? You just feel a little connected, and that's not a coincidence. Okay? That is the relationship between food and spirituality. Okay? And it's really about the present moment. It's not about the future. It's not about eat this way so that you can be enlightened, or eat this way so you can live a long life. No, maybe you will, maybe you won't. Okay? And yeah, there are benefits physiologically, sure. But the reason that I do what I do is, number one, because I like to experience feeling good. And really, the other number one is this yoga principle called ahimsa. And this yoga principle called ahimsa is what drives my actions. And it is my central motivation in everything that I do. And ahimsa is the foundation of all yoga. It's the foundation of other spiritual traditions as well. And it means do not hurt, do not cause injury, and do not kill anything. Okay? And in the beginning, that's an intellectual practice. In other words, in the beginning, you might have to learn that. And you might have to use something called like discipline, and you might have to willpower, all these little words, and then you might have to kind of see it that way, with a little bit of effort. But comes a point not too far away where it has absolutely nothing to do with willpower or effort. It's simply a fact that the idea that you are going to hurt a living being is impossible. It's impossible. It's unthinkable to cause pain or suffering to something else. Unthinkable. Why? Because you see God in anything that's alive. Because that's why it's alive. I just told you, you're alive, you have intelligence, and as soon as you die, intelligence is gone. And then you decompose. Well, guess what? Everything else that's moving also has the same consciousness, intelligence within it. Because remember, there's only one. So there's a very important quote, and I will give it to you in two ways. I'll give it to you the way that Einstein says it, and I'll give it to you the way that I also love to do it. It says that you either see God everywhere, or you never see God. Okay? Einstein said something almost exactly the same. He said, you'll either, it's emotional, you either live your life like everything is a miracle, or like nothing's a miracle. You'll either live your life like everything is a miracle, or nothing is a miracle. It's the same thing, really. I mean, how do you see a hummingbird and not see God? I don't know. How do you see an ant and not see God? How do you see a cockroach and not see God? I don't know. I see God. Now, are there exceptions to this? Occasionally. Like in the case of I had a parasite in my body and it was killing me. So I decided to do an anti-parasite treatment and kill the parasite. Well, that was something that was certainly an exception to this rule. But I'm pretty sure that's the only type of exception that I would make. Because God is in everything that is living, by the very definition that it's alive. Because it has spirit, it has intelligence, consciousness, organization. And that is it. Now, this is the thing, is that in the scale of yoga, right, the 8 limbs, the Ashtanga Yoga, we talked about the Ashtanga Yoga, well, the very, very first part is ahimsa. That's the first thing that it says, ahimsa. We haven't talked about it yet, but that's the basis. Now we talk about it. The very last thing is superconsciousness. Samadhi means you know who you are. Okay? It means you know you are Brahman, you know that you are eternal. Okay, fine. But here's the thing. This is what the Master's saying. I know this is true I can see this as well. That nobody can realize ahimsa until after Samadhi. Even though it's the first step, it's also not realized until after they're all completed. In other words, it isn't until you know who you are, and you know that you are divine, and that you know everything else is divine, and so that you know you are a part of everything else, and that all is one in that sense. And then the idea that you're going to take something living, you're going to hurt it, you're going to kill it. Are you kidding? See, that attitude only comes after samadhi, when you realize all is one. Before that, it's kind of like, okay, let me take some notes. Don't kill. Let me take some notes. Don't hurt other things. It's intellectual at first. Your mind didn't know this, and you don't see the world that way yet. But you will. Because this is what happens when you combine the food and the meditation and the exercise, level of consciousness rises. And that's the very definition. Level of consciousness rises is when you start seeing things differently. And then you start seeing God more. And you certainly start seeing God in everything that's living and breathing and walking and moving, or plants. Everything is God. And that's alive. Okay? And so this is the thing. This is the spiritual part. This is why I do what I do, because hurting another thing is just incomprehensible. Okay? No. Physically, physiologically, mentally, psychologically, and spiritually, it all points in the same direction. We're not meant to eat dead animals. We're not meant to kill things. Now, here's the funny part. If we were, as a human being, if we were as a population of human beings observed by a bunch of aliens, and a bunch of aliens are in a spaceship, and they're watching us, and they know that we're primates because they just do a little scan, right? They scan us like primate, like anything else. They see all the other primates. There's another one. Wait a minute. This one's doing something pretty odd. This primate seems to not know what it's supposed to eat. This primate here is engaged in a series of concentration torture camps to murder systematically millions of animals every hour, when it's not designed to eat it in the first place. Wait a minute, this species, after doing that and murdering, causing the kind of pain and suffering that is unthinkable, okay? They're doing all of this, which in and of itself is incredible, but then what's even more incredible is that then they're eating these animals, and then they're getting sick. And they're all sick. These people see it. All these people, the aliens see it. They're all sick. They're all on some sort of treatment. They're all on drugs. They're all operating at less than optimum levels. And so they're all eating themselves into sickness while they're torturing other animals and while they're ruining the earth. Now, I have a question for you. I want to know if you'd like to play a game with me. Here's the game. Now, the game has 3 possible outcomes. I'd like to know if you'd like to play. The first outcome of this game is that you could lose. The second outcome of this game is that you could lose. And the final outcome of this game is that you could lose. Would you like to play? That's what we're doing. We engaging, and that's why these aliens would look at us and they would say, there's 2 conclusions here. The scientific paper is done, analysis done, 2 conclusions. Now, conclusion number 1, this is the stupidest species on the planet. That's a conclusion. Second conclusion, this is a species that is insane. From the clinical definition of the word insane, it means that they have no idea what they're doing, and what they're doing is crazy. And I don't mean that in a funny way. I mean it's actually crazy. They're killing animals, creating torture camps, and then making themselves sick, and then destroying their own planet at the same time. What kind of freaking idiot would do that? We would. Us intelligent humans, the smartest species on the planet. Is it now? I'm not so sure. Now, let's talk about protein. Well, let's talk about dairy. Okay, let's talk about dairy because that's a big addiction for people. Cheese, right? Everyone loves cheese. I used to love cheese. We gotta talk about dairy for a minute. Eggs is a pretty easy subject because eggs is really just the same subject as meat. Because if you know that eggs become chickens, right? So an egg is really just flesh. So if you just look at it for what it is, it's just flesh. Does that make sense? So when it comes to what's going on with it, it's not vegetarian. There's nothing vegetarian about stealing an egg from a chicken when it was going to be another egg anyway, another chicken anyway. There's nothing about eggs that are healthy unless you're dying of starvation and you need it. In which case, go ahead and eat eggs. Okay. But now the dairy subject is much more interesting to me because a lot more addiction to cheese than mostly any other food. Before we get into that, understand that why people are addicted to cheese is not because of anything that has to do with cheese in particular. But what they're really addicted to is fat, the fattiness of it, the satiation of it. Now, there are elements in cheese that are slightly addictive, that's true, because in milk, mothers are producing a chemical to make the babies want it more. Okay, so the babies want to suckle. Inside the milk is a serotonin or some kind of relaxing chemical. Okay, that's slightly addictive to humans. Okay, but I don't. That's not really that powerful. What's really addictive in cheese is the fat, the fattiness, the fact that you eat it and you're full. Okay, it feels good to be so full, to get that fat. And so really, what we're after with cheese is the fat. And so the solution ultimately is to switch the fat. And that's why the avocado is such an important resource for us on the plant-based path, because the avocado is the perfect fat, the perfect plant-based fat. And so then we get that same satiation. My favorite pizza place in Lima, we call it Veggie Pizza, and they're a vegetarian pizza place. They do sell pizza with cheese, but they have a lot of vegans going in. And so they also have a vegan version of their pizza. They call it funny name. They call it queso de palta. Palta is avocado. They call it like avocado cheese. But what is it? It's just avocado. They just smash up an avocado on top of the pizza after they make it. And so the avocado gives you that creamy, cheesy feeling, and then the rest of the pizza is just delicious. And so it's a perfect solution for people that are looking to understand, what it is that they're really addicted to, which is the fatty part. And now, forgetting about that, I'd like to talk about dairy for a minute, because this is something I take very seriously. And I will now make a statement that says that for all women out there, I'm not very impressed. I'm not very impressed with the female members of the human species. Now, I could say that I'm also not impressed with the male members of our species, and that's true, but the difference is that I don't have any expectations for the male members of our species, because male members of our species are mostly unconscious idiots. However, the female members of our species, I would not have described them that way. But now I will. Unconscious idiots. You women are unbelievable. I can't even believe it. Now, what is it that I can't believe? I'll tell you. You see, I've got a very unusual set of beliefs. I have to admit, I'm strange. I got to admit that, and maybe you will have to agree with me. I got some very unusual beliefs. I happen to believe. I'm sorry. I know it's radical. I happen to believe that all female members of any species, so let's just say all female animals, have a right to not be raped. I'm sorry, oh no. I know that's getting a little out there. All females have a right to not be raped. I think, I'm sorry, all female members of mammals have a right to not have their babies stolen from them upon birth. I'm sorry, I know that's radical, but your baby, I think it shouldn't be stolen from you. I also have a really unusual belief system that says that, you know what? I think that females, after they have baby, they shouldn't have their babies murdered. It's another just radical belief. I also believe that females should not be kept in prison. so that their milk is stolen from them while they're tortured. I'm sorry, I know those are radical beliefs now, but the thing is, if I were a female, and I saw that happening to other females, you could do that? You could do that. You could let that happen. You could participate in that. You could pay for that. You could support that. Rape, incarceration, torture, murder of babies, because that is the dairy industry. Dairy is not vegetarian. Oh no. Oh, not even close. And even if it were, we'll talk about the things about dairy that even if it were the most vegetarian thing in the world, you would never want to touch it. Because number one, it has casein. Casein, that's the protein in milk that causes tumor growth better than anything else. Casein. Number two, it has lactose, which you can't deal with. Number three, it causes osteoporosis. It actually causes osteoporosis. It makes your bones weak because it's acidic. You know how they tell you to take dairy for osteoporosis? It's the cause. It's criminals. These are criminal doctors. Criminal misinformation. Dairy is to be avoided at all costs. You know, this is like to say, I'm a flex-a-vegan. All right, be a flex-a-vegan, but understand that there's nothing flexible about it. I understand you're with your mom and the emotional thing, because really that's why food is so challenging for us as a culture, as a species, because it's so culturally connected to us. And it's because it's what our mom makes. That's what's so hard about it, okay? But we have to evolve from that, okay? So just because your mom makes it doesn't mean it's okay to torture animals. Because you have got to open your eyes, you know, and get your head out of the sand and see what the heck you're doing. Because it's not okay if you have a choice. Now, if you don't have a choice, I don't judge people who have a very small amount of money, okay, and they have got to do what they have to do, and they have to eat what they have to eat, and that's it. And I understand that. And maybe, God willing, hopefully they'll find a way to eat more fruit, eat more bananas, and incorporate the better food and do their best. But I understand that kind of stress, and I don't judge it. But having said that, if you are a spiritual teacher, then you got to understand this stuff. And the dairy thing is so huge, you know? So I don't judge anybody except yoga teachers who continue to eat meat or dairy. I judge them because they're hypocrites. And I might be a hypocrite too, don't get me wrong. In other things, I might say, hey, do this, do that, and then all of a sudden I have a relationship with a girl and it ends bad, and then, you know, I didn't treat her with I'm a hypocrite too. I'm not perfect. But when it comes to this subject, I take it very seriously, and I don't have a lot of tolerance for that. Okay, it's just my own world. Because it's the foundation of the whole thing. You can't go ahead of that. There's no second step if there's no first step. Okay, but as I said, you don't get it until after enlightenment, not before. That's why you can be a flex anything before you actually are enlightened to that degree, because afterwards it's impossible. It's impossible unless you are physically starving to death. Then, yes, because then I'm with you, I'll drink the milk, I'll eat the cheese, I'll do whatever the hell we want, and let's try to survive this boat wreck that we're in, and, you know, try to get back to land. Okay, no problem, or, you know, whatever it is, but anything short of that, that's a lack of spiritual understanding. That's okay, but it's a sign of a lack of level of consciousness. Because how on earth can we do that? And eggs and chickens, the torturing of them is unbelievable. You ever seen a chicken factory? An egg factory? And even if the chicken was out here in nature, and even if it's that chicken so happy, yeah, how happy do you think a chicken is when it comes back to its nest and finds that you stole its eggs? How happy is that chicken? When it happens, a nervous system breakdown because it's looking for its kids. You keep stealing them all the time. You're not meant for it. But the whole thing is, it also hurts us. It's that double negative because look, if we as a species were truly designed to eat those things, I wouldn't be here telling you not to eat it. I'd say, hey, let's go and have a bunch of cows here and let's all murder them in the easiest way possible. Let's save our energy. Why go after and hunt them when we can just kill them and eat them? That would make a lot of sense if we were all domesticated tigers. But we're not. We're domesticated primates. So that doesn't work for us. It literally destroys us. And then we can see it. Do you know what the rate of obesity is right now on Earth? The rate of obesity in America, you know what obesity means? It means that like a person is like 30 or 40 or 50% over their, so we're talking about not overweight, I'm obese. You know, someone who's 5'5" and weighs 220 pounds. You know, they're 100 pounds overweight. We're talking about over 60% in the United States. Some huge percentage, and that's the same way in a lot of the world. Everybody is fat. It's not okay, because overweightness is the beginning of a very short lifespan. You know, that doesn't make you have a long-term healthy path by any means. And again, I don't have children at this moment, but I do believe that parents who don't know how to feed their kids, because they themselves didn't know, but still, that they don't know how to feed their kids, and they feed their kids in a way that creates sickness and disease, and creates obese kids. Have you ever seen that? The fat parents and the fat kids? Little twins of themselves, you know, like little mini me and mini mom and mini dad. Now, I'm sorry, and I know it's a tough thing to say, but I consider that child abuse. I do. I consider that child abuse. I think if you produce a child who is sick for the rest of his life, you abuse the kid. Now, you didn't necessarily do it on purpose, but you still did it because you didn't have to do it. If you had fed that kid differently, he wouldn't end up diseased, he would not have ended up sick, he would not have ended up obese, because that's simply a function of diet. How anyone could say otherwise is just a joke. This is the whole funny thing about doctors. They literally do not acknowledge, medical doctors do not acknowledge a relationship between your food and your health. To them, that's just a secondary thing, not primary. That's just something that maybe talk about, maybe not, maybe do, maybe don't do. But what's really important is take these pills, 2 times a day, and that will take care of it. So, for me, it's the, this protein thing. We'll talk about protein right now, but dairy is just unthinkable. Okay? It's unthinkable. It makes no sense. Oh yeah, let me tell you something else about dairy. I forgot the most important part, actually. Because everything else would be you taking my word for it. This part is not. Do you understand what the definition of a mammal is? You know that you're a mammal, right? Mimifero, you're a mammal. Do you know that there's 5 characteristics, we could say, of mammals? One of them is that they're warm-blooded. You know that? You're warm-blooded, right? Another one is that some of you have hair. 100 more than me. Yeah? Some of you have hair. Okay? So mammals have hair. Okay? Mammals give live birth. Okay? Mammals lactate their young. That means that they're going to give their young milk. And then what's the last one? The last one is that the young, at some point of the life cycle, will detach from the tit. It's called weaning in English, the weaning process. That means there's no longer. And then once that mammal is detached from the tit, meaning they're no longer eating the mother's milk, they never return. That's the definition of a mammal. That there's an epoch in your life where you're supposed to drink milk, and that is when you're an infant. And when that epoch is finished, you graduate off of milk, and when do you return? When? Never. I was not privileged enough to have been breastfed. I think in America, in the 70s, in America, when I was born, they told all the mothers that formula is better than breast milk. They convinced everybody in the 70s that formula was better. And so I think I was breastfed for like 4 days and then put on formula, which is what they did. So that doesn't really count for me. I can't really play this game, but you guys were all breastfed, I'm sure. Because were you breastfed or formula fed? Breastfed. Yeah. Okay. So I know you guys were because this is Latin America,
Yeah.
and there's no thought about you. You were formula fed.
Yeah, because my mom has to work.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So she, after 3 months,
But still, you 3 months.
yeah.
That's better than 3 days.
Yeah.
Still, 3 months is good.
Formula too, because I didn't like it.
You were not eating well. The mother's, your mother's.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were a formula baby too.
Yeah.
Sucks for us. Anyway, here's my point. My point is that if you were breastfed and your mother you are graced enough to have your mother alive right now, and you're that blessed, and I know you're hungry. Would you like to call your mom up and ask her if she, when your mom has a baby brother, she just had a baby, okay? So you have a baby brother now, and she just had a baby, so she's already lactating. But you see, the thing is that your baby brother, he's only using the right nipple. The whole left side is open. Why don't you get on down there and jump on the left tit? You're hungry, right? Would you ever do that in 1,000,000 years? Would you ever, as an adult, suckle your mom again? Why not? Because could you think of something more unnatural, more bizarre in your entire life than that? Can you think of something more a violation of nature than you, as an adult mammal, suckling another mammal, even if it's your mom? Well, let's think about what could even be more bizarre than that. Because that's bizarre enough, but that, you can even imagine it. You want to cross the species boundary and suckle another animal? Now, let me ask you a question. How many times in nature has an adult mammal returned back to his mom or her mom and suckled again? How many times have you seen that in nature? An adult mammal, an adult giraffe, 5-year-old giraffe finds his mom's 15, and he says, you know what, Mom, I'm going to start suckling again. Adult giraffe suckles a mom. Have you ever seen that? You want to know how many times you will see that in nature? 0. 0. You want to know how many times you will see an animal in nature suckle the milk of a different species? Exactly 0. 0 and 0. Now I said in nature. I didn't say a human being can't force the thing together by saying, oh, you're a pregnant, this, a goat, and I have a baby sheep, and here, guys, suckle it. That could happen. A motherly instinct can be provided to any animal if you manipulate it. I'm talking about in nature, which is the real law. You ever seen it? Nope. You ever will see it? Nope. So honestly, forgetting about all the stuff I spoke about women and females and all of that stuff, which is to me the real thing, but forgetting about that, if all I ever did was tell you that you're a mammal and the very definition of mammals is that you get weaned, and you need to hear more than that? I don't know why. Like, what else could you need to hear more than that? Than to know that it is the greatest violation of nature for an adult to continue to take dairy food. That's all I would need to hear, okay? Forgetting about all the rest of the part of the story. The cancer, the tumors, the lactose intolerance, the osteoporosis. I mean, God, there is nothing good about dairy unless you're a baby and then drink the dairy from your own mom. And that's fine. Let's talk about protein, and then I'm done, because with this, and I'll take some questions and all that. I can talk about this subject for 3 weeks straight, and that is the School of Plant Nutrition, is me talking about the subject for 3 weeks straight. This is just a kind of overview of the subject so that you have a beginning of an idea. If you want to take this to the next level, the School of Plant Nutrition is 120 lessons that are all extremely specific and targeted to, you know, these subjects, you know, like completely, to some degree. Now, protein, okay. Don't be fooled by protein, even though it's easy to be, because protein has a very good marketing campaign behind it. In fact, protein has such a marketing campaign behind it that it's almost the greatest marketing campaign that's ever been created. How many people do you know believe that protein is good? Or that you want to get protein? Or that the more protein in your food, the better? I mean, how many people do you know believe that? Pretty much everybody right now? Well, that's amazing because it's completely false. And yet somehow everybody got to believe it. That's impressive. Very, very impressive. First of all, you gotta hand it to them. Okay? Gotta hand it to those meat and dairy industries that they were able to do that. Well, one reason is that the people that write the school books in the United States is the dairy and meat industry themselves. They actually produce the nutrition school books and give it to the government. Well, I wonder what they say. Okay? Now, protein, though, is not a word that has any meaning at all, actually. The word is meaningless, because the word can mean any number of things that are completely different from each other. Whenever you have that, you have a meaningless word. Because the word that matters is not protein, which could be cooked from an animal, raw from an animal, cooked from a plant, raw from a plant. All those things are completely different animals, so how can you all call them the same word? You can't, first of all. But second of all, the word doesn't matter. What matters is the words called amino acids. Amino acids, that's what matters. That's what you're built on. See, protein is just amino acids that have already been constructed. They've already been placed. They've already been put into some form. That's protein. But when they're broken down and they're just floating around, and when your body digests something in order to build it back up, first it has to break it down to the level called amino acids, which is the basic building blocks. There are only 20 amino acids, roughly. If you get all, well, 10 are essential, 10 are non-essential. An essential amino acid means you must derive it from your diet. It means you have to get it. It's essential. A non-essential amino acid means that as long as you got the first 10, your body can biosynthesize the other ones. So they're not essential because your body can make them. You could eat them as well, but your body can also produce them. Only, of course, if you got the first 10. Now, if somebody gets all of their amino acids, and those amino acids are not cooked, because when you cook something, it destroys it. And that's kind of the real conversation about the food, nutrition conversation, is eat as much of your food not cooked, because fire destroys chemical bonds, and fire destroys magnetic characteristics and electromagnetism, and fire destroys everything. So, if you got your amino acids and you got them from a plant source and they weren't cooked, nobody can ever talk to you about protein. You never notice that whenever anyone knows or learns or discovers that you're eating more or less vegetarian because you opened up your trap, you decided to open up your mouth for some reason or another, you know, oftentimes that's a mistake. But you know what they'll do is they'll ask you a question. You know what the first question is?
Where do you get your protein?
Yeah.
From?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Where do you get your protein? Nice idea, but where do you get your protein? That's the question. Now understand that first of all, that's not a question, it's an attack. They're not actually asking you, they're actually just trying to knock you down. They're hoping you don't have the answer. They're hoping that by that you don't have the answer, that you get confused, and that you come back down to their level. That's what they're really hoping for. It's not actually a question, so don't be fooled. But nonetheless, it's what everybody wants to know. And what you need to know is that the question of protein doesn't exist. The question of amino acids exists. acids. And once you have your amino acids, you will build your own protein, because guess what? It always had to be that way. If you think you ever used protein in the form that you ate it, you don't understand anything about digestion or about protein, about building nothing. Because let's say you eat a fish because you want the protein, right? Let's take that example, right? Fish has protein, blah, blah, blah. You eat your fish. Fish protein. That means that the fish, by eating other things, algae and all that, it got amino acids. The fish got the amino acids, and inside the fish, God built fish flesh from amino acids, right? That's how fish grows, right? Fish protein's getting constructed inside the fish because the fish is getting the amino acids and it's producing it. Fine. Well, now the fish protein already exists. It's protein. It's constructed already. And now you eat that. What, you think you're going to use it? Like that? If you did, you'd look like a fish. What do you have to do? Have you ever heard of this very far out process called digestion? Digestion, what is digestion? It's the breakdown of bigger bonds to smaller bonds. And so it's the breakdown of constructed protein into the amino acid level. And once the amino acids are there, basic again, your human body builds human flesh, because your human flesh is not the same as a fish. Or is it?
No.
No, it's human, it's different. So, protein is not a question. The question is amino acids, and guess what? Now here's the thing. This is the most amazing statement of them all. Are you ready? Because of all these people that talk about flesh foods and animal foods for protein, here's the quote. All amino acids are produced in the plant kingdom. All. That is where they're produced. Animals only have them because they ate the plants. So the amino acids are produced in the plant kingdom, not the animal kingdom. So you get them from eating the fruits, the vegetables, the nuts, and the seeds, and the algae, and all that stuff, because that's really where they're produced. And it's very, very easy to get a full spectrum of amino acids. It's very easy. You can look on Google, you can look and say fruits, it's cut off, it's okay, yeah, that was enough. That was enough of the memory. Thanks. So, amino acids easy, and I brought this as well. This is my secret weapon. This is only available in the States. It's very difficult to find this. This is a blue-green algae. This is the sister species of spirulina. Have you heard of spirulina before?
Yes.
Well, spirulina is a blue-green algae, and spirulina also has all amino acids. So no one who ever eats spirulina could ever be protein deficient. It's not possible. By the way, you want to know how many cases of protein deficiency have been diagnosed in America and in Europe in the last 15 years? 0. 0. No one's ever seen one. Everyone's afraid of something that no one's ever seen before. You ever heard of someone being protein deficient? You can't be. Not here. Because DNA has protein. You can't be. So the whole thing is a campaign of misinformation by people who have a vested interest in your misinformation because they make money from it. It's okay if it's not recording, but if it is, it's fine. Is it? Yeah. So when people have a vested interest, you might want to be a little careful with the information. Now let me ask you a question. As I'm presenting this information to you, with all the information I've given you, how much money can I make from it? If you eat more fruit, how much money can I make from that?
Less.
I can make 0 money from that. If you eat according to exactly how I say, How much money can I make from that? Where is my interest in that? Where is it?
Maybe if you.
I don't have one. It's for you, yeah. My best interest is my interest is for your best interest, but I don't have a personal interest. I don't have a stake. This information doesn't help me at all. I already use it. So because I don't have an interest in it, I don't have a conflict in it, I'm not trying to, then there's a very good chance this information might be true. Because I don't have any other reason to share it with you. Okay? So you want to be very careful about that. Where's the information coming from? You know, not that, you know, look, I could also be telling you that I also sell this stuff. And the truth is that if you were to order this stuff in the United States and you happen to put my name as your reference, yeah, I would get money for it. Good, please do. But I don't care. Do it or don't. I don't care. It helped me, yeah, well, big deal. This is some good, not a big deal. Okay, that's just true. Take it or leave it. But not everybody who has a product to promote is lack of integrity. Some people just really believe in their thing and they happen to make money from it, and it happens to be true. That also is possible. That's true with this. But be very, very careful of people that are telling you something and that they profit from the information. And I'm not doing that here. And so that's why there's a very good chance that what I'm saying might be true. Got it? Okay. Now, the point of this is simply to help ourselves prevent first. Prevent first. Prevent first. Solve if need be. We solve with the 5 factors. We apply these things. You know, it's perfect system. How are we eating? How are we moving our body? Lymphatic drainage and yoga and all that. How are we using our mind? Because the mind is our reality and it determines everything for us. How are we resting? I told you resting is the key to the immune system. And can you please stop putting toxic waste into your body and on your body? In other words, how are we living more organically? That is how we heal ourselves, how we prevent diseases, how we help other people. Okay? So that's protein. Don't worry about it. It comes naturally. It's just a big fear. And it's unbelievably misguided. Let me tell you this. Let me put you this way. I'll give you the quotes from my teacher. Protein is the worst kind of food you could eat. Okay? You want to eat as little protein as you possibly can. Protein is the acid side of chemistry. That's what it is. It's the nitrogen acid side of chemistry. And protein causes the lymphatic stagnation and cellular damage. This is protein. Proteins are what's killing us. It's heavy proteins, animal proteins. Plant proteins we can neutralize pretty well. We're pretty good at that. But still, we still don't want to overdo plant proteins. You know, like, unless you're a bodybuilder and your job is to look huge, in which case, fine, then take the raw vegan protein powders. And they make them, Sun Warrior, things like these are raw vegan protein powders. Because you have a reason and you want to look bigger than normal, then that would be the only reason. Okay? But unless you're a bodybuilder and you want to look like unnaturally large in your musculature, you would never, ever want to eat extra protein. Ever. It's no good. Protein does not cause strength, everybody. Protein does not give you energy. None of those things. That's what people think, right? Gives you strength, gives you energy. Neither one. What gives you strength is exercise. Right? You can't eat yourself into strength, can you? No. And what gives you energy is carbohydrate. It's fruit. It's the carbon. Energy is carbon. This isn't protein. You can't burn protein and get fuel. At least nothing good. I mean, that would be brutal. That would be absolutely brutal. There's no calories in it. The fuel is in the carbohydrate. That's the fruit. So that's the energy. We get energy from fruit. All right? So don't be fooled by the amazing amount of misinformation about protein. It's incredible how damaging it is to human beings and how dangerous the misinformation is. And I know it's difficult because you're going against an entire ocean current of misinformation, and then you're going to be there just being like, protein's not good. And then you'll be like, oh, tsunami coming over you of people that are like, protein, 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 experts, protein, protein, and you're just going to be like, you know, your voice won't even be heard. But don't ever stop, because you, if you understand what I'm saying, are correct. Protein is the cause of everyone's problems. It's certainly not the solution. It's the last thing you want to think about. And I'll close it with this, guys. Protein's not a nutrient. It's not a nutrient. It's the result of nutrition. So they talk about protein and protein like it's a good thing. It's not even a nutrient. It's already the result of nutrition. The nutrient is amino acids, everyone. So get them. They're only from the plant kingdom. That's where they're made. Okay, and vitamin B12, I'll close it with vitamin B12, the all famous vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 is produced not by animals, not by mammals. It's produced by microorganisms. It's produced by certain very fundamental types of bacteria. That's what produces vitamin B12, often as a byproduct, like as almost like a digestive byproduct. But vitamin B12 is synthesized by microorganisms. Now, in nature, we would have gotten our vitamin B12 because of the biome inside of our intestines. Should normally be full of 40 different species of probiotic bacteria that are also known as microorganisms. And in nature, we would be producing plenty of vitamin B12 on our own through that population. You never have to think about it. We have wiped out our colonies of bacteria because we drink alcohol, we've taken antibiotics, other pharmaceuticals, and then so the bacteria has been killed. And so that has a lot of implications on our immune system, first of all, but also for this other conversation. So that's in nature. Also in nature, I told you before, in nature, there's no hygiene. In nature, you don't wash your fruit. You know what I'm saying? In nature, you don't take the dirt off your food. You're constantly eating microorganisms, which are in the dirt.